we are going to begin. So let me take you straight to a Rashi. Parak Tezayin, Pasuk Chof Zayin. If you have a Chumash, probably the most frightening, I would say, Rashi in the whole parsha, because on a certain level it's actually quite incomprehensible if you think about it, right? The pasuk says like this. So this whole Machlokes of Korach has really been gathering pace, and Dosan and Aviram get involved. The Dosan va'Aviram yotzu nitzavim. It says they went out from their tent, sort of standing upright. Pesach Oleh, the entrance to their tent, when a Shem of V'neihem v'tapom. They're with their wives, their children, even their little ones. And the Rashi picks up here on the fact that the reference to the children is highlighted in the pasuk. Rashi says like this: Boyurei, the second Rashi, Kama kosher hamachlokes. Come and see how bad, how severe, how terrible machlokes is. Shahri based in Shalmata ain't unshin elo ad sheyobi shtei saras, because based in Shalmata, the earthly court, based in down here, the punishments only begin when a person has reached the age of physical maturity. Or based in Shalmala, and the based in Shamayim, punishments only apply at Esrim Shana, 20 years old. But can't of do afyon kishadayim. Even here, even the youngest, those who were still nursing, were perished in the when the pit opens, and they're all swallowed together with their entire families. And the question here is obvious, because whatever they did, however bad it was, right? Clearly the children didn't take part, right? You're talking about even those, Rashi specifically says, Yom Keishadar, those who were too young, those who were still nursing, they have nothing, they had no knowledge of anything, and yet they perish as well. And that's the question. What is it about this incident, or the way things transpire in this event, that can actually lead to not only the perpetrators being punished in this way, but everyone associated with them, even those who were effectively completely innocent? They didn't do anything. So that's what we have to try and understand. We have to try and understand what the roots of Machlokes are. The title of the show is the roots of Machlokes, where it comes from, and the tragic consequences, and what we can try and learn from those, the lessons that we can learn from that. That's really the work today, this evening, on this parsha. So that question is posed by the Sichos Musar Chaim Shmulevitz. He says, and he asks the question, and he presents the following explanation. He says there's a Gemara, a well-known Gemara in Sanhedrin, that talks about the fact that the parsha of the Ben Sora Mora, right, the rebellious son, is put next to the Isha Sifas Torah, when he finds this woman in battle and marries her and everything else. And the point is that if he does that, he'll end up having a son who is a Ben Sora Mora, goes off the if you like, off the rails in this way, this rebellious son. And the Ramban explains that what happened was that the father went in one direction, and there was a root, if you like, in the child that impacted on the child as well. The negative consequences of the child came from the father. So Rabbi Chaim Shmulevitz wants to say that since the parents, in a similar way, since the parents were so deeply involved here in Machlokes, they must have been, right? They were so deeply entrenched in this Machlokes with Moshe Rabbeinu, the roots and the rot set in so deeply that it impacted even their children as well, in the sense that they would grow up to be of the same character. They will be Baalei Machlokes, and therefore the same principle applies as how Rashi explains the Ben Sora Mora. Rashi says, what is the Ben Sora Mora punished in such a severe? Why does the Ben Sora Mora killed? And according to one opinion in Chazal, it never actually occurred. There never was a rebellious son in this way, this Ben Sora Mora. But the Torah says, Mutzav sheyomus zakai v'ayomus chayav. The idea is it's better you should die innocent rather than guilty. So he says that the notion is that the rot sets in so deeply that inevitably the children would tragically go in the same direction, and therefore it was better in the way that they should all go in one go at the start. That's what Chaim Shmulevitz says. The difficulty is, with that explanation, as I think you'll understand, is that it's still difficult. Still a punishment. You know, how can that punishment apply in that way to children? It's a really, really, really incredibly difficult question. I'd like to share with you an explanation of the Maharal, Gur Aryeh, which I think is very, very powerful. It's in a different, it has similarities to what Chaim Parsha is saying, but there are some key differences, which I think can help us in some way, at some level, to understand this. Again, he asks the same question. He says, why is this hate, this sin, different to any other? No other one do you find that the children should be punished in this way. And he says like this, he says, you need to understand the primary reason of what's going on here. He says, why is it? Why can a child not be punished? Hashem doesn't bring punishments on children. Doesn't have in that way. Can't say that. It's not possible. When it comes to Machlokes, he says, Sheguf ha-gehinnom dovak b'Machlokes, right? Gehinnom itself is tied to Machlokes. Machlokes is entrenched. It's wrapped up in Gehinnom. It's the same thing, this type of Machlokes. They're both created, he says, on the second day of creation. They're wrapped up together. And he says, therefore, that is why Nenash Afakotan, even the child, could be punished. It's like an automatic consequence. The punishment comes of its own accord, so to speak. It's not that Hashem is punishing the kotan, the child, to bring the punishment upon the child. With the machlokes itself automatically comes this consequence, this terrible, horrific consequences. There's no need to bring the punishment. It's just an automatic result. He brings a moshel to explain it. He says, imagine if someone says to someone else, I'm not going to kill you, but if you kill yourself, I haven't done anything. He says that's what machlokes says, right? It's like a person falling on their own sword. That really is what machlokes is. A person who becomes so entrenched in machlokes in this way, it affects him to such an extent that the actions the person takes brings the automatic tragic consequences of a quote unquote punishment that is so severe that it even sweep up those who are completely innocent, the children, together with it. That's how terrifying machlokes is. This idea that there can be something which is so serious, which a person cannot stop the ball rolling. That's almost what I think the Gorari and the Maharal of Prague is saying. Maharal is saying is that once a person has got themselves involved in this level, to this depth in terms of machlokes, there are tragic automatic consequences that result, including things which the person would never have imagined in the first place. Because that's really the end result. That's really the final stage. That's really where machlokes ends up, how tragic it can become. And it occurred to me that it could be that there's a possible link to this idea in the famous Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, which says the list of things that were created on Erev Shabbos ben Hashmoshes. So one of the things that was created on Erev Shabbos, just in the twilight period, was the Pi Ha'aretz, right? The mouth of the land opening up to swallow all of these people, and Korach, everything else, right? Those who perish in the land, some perish in other ways of the fire, but the ones who were swallowed up in the land, the Pi Ha'aretz. And the question, which is asked by a number of Meforshim, it's actually a fascinating machlokes, I think, between the Rambam and the Maharal. You know, why was it that it had to be embedded in the 6 days of creation? What does the Mishnah mean? You know, they were nivru me'erev Shabbos ben Hashmoshes. Hashem had to create these things right at the beginning of creation. Because if you're going to tell me it's because it takes creation away from the natural order, which clearly it does, right? The opening of the mouth, the land, the earth swallowing people up, it's obviously against the normal way the world is meant to operate. But not every nace was created in this way, right? The Yam Suf is not, the ability of the Yam Suf to split is not created is not on the list. So what is it about this that's on the list? So perhaps it could be, and I haven't worked out whether it fits with any of the others, but in this particular one, it could be that the idea is like this, that the Pi Ha'aretz, which swallows Korach, the mouth of the earth, which swallows Korach, is embedded in creation as an automatic consequence. It's the same idea. It's there from the very beginning. Because if Korach is to go down this route, once he has become so entrenched in that machlokes, it's an inevitable consequence. It's almost like it's in the fabric of creation, right? That's the same idea as the Maharal. Just like the Maharal says, the only way you can understand why even the children were punished is because it was an automatic result. The person has brought that upon himself through their actions. That's how terrible the fire of Machlokes is. So too, there is this notion of this, of the earth, of this mouth of the earth being built into the land there to function for that if this tragedy would happen. So what are the defining features? What are the defining features of Machlokes that are expressed in this parsha, which can help us understand and understand in a way that is a positive, in the sense to learn the lessons from this parsha? So I'm going to carry on a little bit with this piece from Chaim Shmulevitz, who tries to answer this question and tries to understand what it is about the type of Machlokes which it can lead to these terrible consequences. Because Machlokes is a complicated thing. Sometimes Machlokes is necessary. Depends whether it's Machlokes l'shem shamayim or shelo l'shem shamayim. And the Mishnah in Avos defines for us what that means. Kol Machlokes l'shem shamayim perek hey Mishnah Yud Zayin. Any Machlokes which is for the sake of heaven, sofa lehiskayim. At the end of the day, it will last. She'ein l'shem shamayim, ein sofa lehiskayim. It's not l'shem shamayim, it's not going to last. Ein zehi Machlokes l'shem shamayim. What is the definition of a machlokes, says the Mishnah, which is l'shem shamayim, it's for the sake of heaven? Zu machlokes Hillel Shammai v'Hillel. The machlokes and Shammai and Hillel, they had many machlokes in their whole machlokes, goes to the whole of Shas. That was l'shem shamayim, and therefore it lasted. It was established for she'eino l'shem shamayim, and a machlokes which is not l'shem shamayim. Zu machlokes Korach v'chol hadosa. That's the machlokes of Korach and all his congregation. He brings the Pirush Mishnayos of the Rambam, who says like this: Ki mi sheyachlok. This is the critical point. The Rambam understands what's the difference. They both argue. You know, you argue Korach and Hillel Shammai argue. What's the difference? A person who argues not with the intention of contradicting the other person, to appease him and to understand and just to know the truth, that's how his words will be established and will not stop. The Rambam understands that if you want to try and understand and put your finger on the point of, discovering whether a machlokes is l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven or not, is it a good one or is it a bad one? There's a very simple way of telling. It doesn't require any kind of deep intellectual leaps of whatever to try and work out. A simple thing, he says, when both sides, both parties, are genuinely interested in hearing the other side, that's the sign that it's l'shem shamayim. That's the sign that it's a debate for the sake of heaven. Because that demonstrates that the purpose of the debate, of the argument, is to arrive at the truth. I disagree with you. We have a disagreement, right? Okay, people disagree. But the fact that you're willing to hear the other side, you're willing to think about it, consider it, right? That's the sign that it's l'shem shamayim. Because by that you're showing, if the person will convince you to an extent that you would actually change your mind. You'd agree with them, because all you're doing at the end of the day is searching for the truth. That's all you're interested in doing. Okay? And that's called l'shem shamayim. And he points out a fascinating thing about Korach. How do you see with Korach that it was not l'shem shamayim? Because he says that you find Moshe tried to appease Korach, right? Tries to appease Korach, and it made absolutely no impact on him at all. The Yalkut Shimoni says that Korach said that if I respond, then he, I know that he's a very clever guy, Moshe. So the Chacham God, all the Yalkut says, and he says, he'll beat me, he'll win over me, and I'll have to agree. Better I don't respond, better I don't answer, better I don't get into a debate. When Moshe sees that there's no point debating Korach, okay, then he stops. And then he says to Dosan and Aviram, and they also don't listen to him. They also don't listen. And the fascinating thing is, if I'm not mistaken, that if you look in the way that the Machlokes itself plays out, you find that Korach, the psukim begin with Korach's first approach to Moshe. He says, why are you taking, he says, why have you taken all these positions yourself and your family and everything else? They should go to me. They should go to me. And he responds by saying, Hashem will work out what is going to happen. And he says, and then he goes to call to Dosan and Aviram. And then he davens to Hashem, and then he says they have to take the fire pans, etc., etc. And And then Hashem says, just separate from Moshe and Aaron. He says to Moshe and Aaron, sorry, separate from Korach, come away from them, don't get involved in them anymore. And then the result happens, and the earth opens up. So what you see is that the only time in the Torah Korach's words are recorded as saying anything is at the beginning. Korach has his introductory few words. That's it. He doesn't engage anymore. He doesn't engage anymore in any dialogue at all with Moshe Rabbeinu. And that's the sign that it's not L'shem Shamayim. What is the situation? Where do you see the opposite of that? The classic example is Hillel and Shammai. That's what's listed in the Mishnah. Hillel and Shammai, the Gemara in Eruvin says, why did Hillel merit that the halacha was like them? Because they would teach both their words and the words of Beis Shammai. Not only that, they used to put the words of Beis Shammai before their own words. There's a Gemara brings a proof for that from the case with Sukkah. They had a debate about sitting in the Sukkah, and they specifically put Beis Shammai's words before their own. In fact, generally speaking, I think you find that Beis Shammai is usually quoted before Beis Hillel whenever there's a Machlokes. First Beis Shammai, then Beis Hillel. So Beis Hillel epitomized those who are able and have the humility to listen to the other side first. Why? Because all they wanted to arrive at was the emes. That was all they're interested in, right? That's all they wanted. And the way they could tell what they were saying was the emes was they kept shtum until they'd heard the other side. And then they worked out, okay, now we'll work out whether what we're saying is correct or not. That's the difference. Now, how did Korach get to this point? How did Korach get to this point where he had descended, if you like, so far into Machlokes and so swept up in it, there was nothing he could do. Rav Yaakov Naiman is Sefer Darchei Musa. He says the following thing. He says, because we know they were very holy people in every way. They were, how on earth could this happen to him? Toras Chaim Parsha, he quotes Perek Yud Aleph, talks about the concept of kovod. And he says like this, Al dov hazeh nichshelu rabim v'nevdu. There are so many who have fallen as a result of kovod, as a result of honor. There's a famous chazal he quotes about Yerovam ben Nevat. And Yerovam ben Nevat that had the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, takes hold of Yerovam ben Nevat, and he says to him, change your mind, don't do the things, Nachat describes the bad things that he did. He says, change your mind, you can pull back from this, you don't need to do this. And he says, Va'ani va'ata u'ben Yishai natal b'gan Eden. And if you change now, if you stop what you're involved in, these wicked ways, the machlokes, everything else, and you turn around and you retract, myself and you, Hashem says, me and you and Ben Yishai, David HaMelech, will walk together in Gan Eden. And you know his response is? Omalei, he says back, mi borosh. Who's first? Okay, great. We'll be in Gan Eden together. Who's going to be first? Who's going to be the head? Omalei Ben Yishai borosh. He says, David HaMelech, he's going to walk first. You'll be with him in Gan Eden. He'll walk first. Omalei hachi lo boin, I'm not interested. Not interested. He throws away everything. Why? Because he can't be first. Because that's the nature of kovod. That's the, he was a great man. He was a great man, but it doesn't matter how great a person is. And that, he says, and the Toras Chaim Parsha, back quoting the Toras Chaim Parsha, quotes Korach as the archetype example of this, of someone who he takes everyone with him. He takes the whole Eidah with him. He takes all of the whole business because of the kovod that's involved. Okay? He sees Elitzofan ben Uziel, who becomes the Nasi, and he says he wants to be the Nasi. He wants to be the Nasi. Chacham was Korach was a very clever man, and Kikolo Eido Kolom Kadoshim. He understands the holiness. He understands the significance. He understands they're all holy, but nevertheless, they weren't. The concept of kovod takes hold of him to such an extent that it blinds the person. It blinds, and that's the basis. That's the basis. So it would seem to link the two together that what the search for kovod does is it prevents the person hearing the other side properly. So that's how the two are linked, right? That's what Chaim Shmulevitz says that the fundamental way you tell, quoting the Birnbaum on Pirkei Avos, is between a Machlokes and L'shem Shamayim and Shelo L'shem Shamayim, is are you willing to hear the other side before your own, if you are, and genuinely hear it? And if you are, it's because it's clear you're looking for the truth. But what blinds the person to listen to the other side? Kovod. Because kovod means your aim is not to find the truth. The ultimate aim is kovod, your own kovod. And even the greatest of people, everyone has this challenge of kovod. Just human, we're built that way. Maybe why exactly how that works? Maybe we need to be built that way. But the fact is that it prevents a person seeing the other side properly. Now, sometimes we can look at a situation of machlokes and we can say, but it's okay because it doesn't involve me. You know, we observe from the sidelines. But for that, there's a very, very powerful Ramban, which is worth seeing inside. Perek Yud Zayin, Posuk Yud. Perek Yud Zayin, Posuk Yud. If you look at the Ramban, again, you don't have to, but if you are following inside, sometimes it's nice to see inside. Ramban, Perek Yud Zayin, Posuk Yud. Hey Romu, Hashem says to Moshe, Hey Romu, lift yourself up away from this congregation, this aid of Achaleo Som Karoga. I will destroy them instantly by your property, and they fell on their faces. Okay? Ramban asks a simple question. Loi havinosi, he says, Tam hakosav hazeh. Don't understand this pasuk. Right? And he says, there's another pasuk earlier on we have with the Meraglim, the same thing. He bodlu, it says with the Meraglim, bodlu mitocho edo hazeh. Separate yourself from this Eidah, right? Same thing. What's the Ramban's problem? We know that Hashem is perfectly capable of doing away with the baddie, right? And keeping the tzaddikim preserved and whole, right? Mitzrayim, Pesach, he jumps over the houses, right? Hashem is able to do away with Korach without telling Moshe Rabbeinu, move away, you might get caught up. You know, why does he have to, right? It's not going to happen, right? So why does that happen? He says, he says, all plagues, terrible events, he says, you have shlosha yeshenim matales achas nebach, you can have three people who are sleeping under the same garment. Two pass away and one escapes. That's the decree of Hashem. Hashem decrees how everything works, no matter how close they are. Says the Ramban, Venire would seem shoya ketzev yotzil homes gam kol ha'eda kamisa sachatoim ha'ela shnimshnocha achareim. The anger, the wrath, the effect of what had transpired was so powerful that it spread far beyond those who had done the wrong thing. That it went throughout the whole of all the people. If you think about it, the people involved were tiny numbers. I mean, relatively speaking, to 250 men. You're not talking about major numbers. It's spread throughout. They mock us, whether it was going to be those who perished through the mouth of the earth or whether it's going to be through those who perished with the fire. They mock us. They had the potential to affect everyone, to really kill everyone there. Unless there was some miracle that would save those those who could escape. He entertains the possibility, Hashem said it for the honor of the righteous, that they shouldn't, as long as they were there, Hashem wouldn't affect them. He says, the idea that's being expressed in these psukim, both here and in the case of the Meraglim, to understand that they also needed to seek mercy and kapara. And Moshe was the one who spurred them on to do so immediately. So the frightening thing really about this Ramban is that Machlokes doesn't spare anyone. It doesn't allow a person to say, I'm just on the sidelines, I'm not going to get involved. You see that the greatest people here, Hashem says, you need to deliberately step back. You need to stay away from it, because anyone can get swept up in it. Now, what's the cure? What's the potential cure? Because that also must be in this parsha as well. So look at it. If you take a look at the Perek Yud Zayin Posuk Chof Gimel, so a bit later on, you have the unusual episode of the staffs. Right, the staffs are placed together, and the Mate Aaron, the staff of Aaron, it flowers. Okay, and it flowers with almonds. Rashi says on this. It's actually. I'm going to straight to the Kliyakar. The Kliyakar says the following thing. The Kliyakar says it's in the middle. If you're following it, it's in the middle of the Kliyakar. He says that what is the notion of hine, behold? So that pasuk, it says Vayim Machras Vayovim Moshe Elohidus. Moshe came into the Elohidus V'nei, and behold, Parach Matei Aaron Levei Slev. So the Aaron's staff is flowered, and it's grown almonds. That's what's happened, right? That's what's happened. So what is this word hine? He says the word hine, we find that it really refers to an expression of zerizos, to be quick to do something. He says that that everything a person, hine implies both doing something quickly and also something with simcha. He brings the pasuk, when Moshe Rabbeinu is told that he is going to be the one to take them out of Mitzrayim, Hashem says, Aaron, your brother, is coming towards you, it says the same, Hine, and Hine, he's coming towards you. He says, anything a person does bizrizas quickly, gets on with it fast, has got that energy to do it, generally speaking, there's simcha there as well. But there's somech basiyasa, it goes together, right? If you're happy to do something, if you're excited to do something, if you don't have a problem getting up in the morning for something, that is then there's usually an element of simcha there together with that zrizas. It goes together, right? That's how it is. Now, he says like this: when Aaron HaKohen rejoiced towards Moshe Rabbeinu was his younger brother, okay? And nevertheless, despite the fact that Moshe had been given that honor instead of him, really, he was the older one, he didn't have any jealousy. He wasn't upset in any way. He rushed to meet him. He had the simcha there. He was happy for him. In that merit, Aaron was given that position of the kahuna to also enjoy the simcha, tremendous simcha that would come through the pinnacle of avodah, which the kohanim had to do, right? And that is why you find, so he's linking 3 times here the word hine. You've got the hine hu yotzei l'krasecha, behold, Aaron is coming towards Moshe Rabbeinu with that simcha and that zrizas when Moshe Rabbeinu is on his way to Mitzrayim. You've got the hine of the flowering of the staff, right? And the zriz, where's the zrizas here? So the zrizas is the flowering quickly of the trees, but more than that, Rav Hirsch points out that the almond is the quickest. I didn't know that apparently the almond is the quickest thing to blossom to flower. Apparently, very, very fast, right? It comes before anything else, right? L'shkoid is to wait for something, to do it quickly. Shkedim, it happens very, very fast. That's what the almonds represent, okay? That's the second occasion. And the third occasion is later on in the Parsha, where Hashem says to Aaron HaKohen, Hinei nosati lecha es mishmeres truma, right? I'm going to give you the responsibility, the gift of truma, as a result of, in the merit of the Hinei hu yotzei l'krasecha. Because you came to meet Moshe Rabbeinu with such simcha, such joy, with that word Hinei, so too you're going to get the same thing here as well. So what do we learn? What do we learn from this? What is the antidote, if you like, to Machlokes? So perhaps we can suggest that if a person gets on with what they need to do in life, right? Just gets on with it, just happy for someone else's successes, and you just do what you need to do, not looking out for one's own covered, not looking out from covered for others for what one does. You just get on with it. This is my job. This is what I need to do. I'm focused on the task at hand. That allows you to be happy at someone else's successes and remain focused on what you need to do. And by definition, that takes away the seeds of Machlokes, because it prevents the blinding of covered. I need that external covered. I need that honor from others or whatever, which leads in turn to sort of the jealousy. I should have that, not him. It's my covered. Korach comes along and says, why are they there? I should have this on. It all flows one from the other. And as we said, Machlokes, and that inability then to see the point of view of someone else. The message of the almonds, the message of the zrizas, the speed, the alacrity that takes place here is this idea that a person is faced with situations in life where it is a threat sometimes, the threat of Machlokes, the fact that someone else is taking a different position which is threatening to one's own. But at the end of the day, if one focuses fundamentally on one's own tasks, that's the lesson of Aaron HaKohen as opposed to Korach. Focus on what we need to do. What do I need to do in this situation? Do that with simcha, we do that with zrizas. Then what happens is the roots of Machlokes can be uprooted right at the very root. They can be prevented at the very root. And as a result, one doesn't fall into those terrible results as happens in this parsha. Thank you all very much for listening and have a very good Shabbos.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you. Good Shabbos.
Take care. Good Shabbos.
It's like 2 steps of tutors.
Birnbaum.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.